Hey guys, welcome back. So now continuing our playlist on the Year of the Villain, to where at this point we've come to the conclusion of the arc on the Apex Predator. And we come to the point to where, man, I just really don't think you guys understand how powerful Lex Luthor is about to be. Like, it's finna get crazy. Because to this point, he's been following the instructions of the Batman Who Laughs, and his reward as a result of it, it's just a million times bigger than what he was originally aiming for. So let's get into it. But first, if you're new to the channel, be sure to subscribe to catch the spills every week. And don't forget to hit that bell up top so we can squat up in the comments for the first hour. Alright, so now prior to this point, we've covered a lot, to say the least, but prior to this point, we've talked about the new history that James Tynion and Scott Snyder have established throughout this new run of Justice League, which connected the early childhood of Lex Luthor and Martian Manhunter, and with the events that have taken place recently, with Lex Luthor discovering the hidden forces which originally belonged to Perpetua, and upon discovering them, assembling the Legion of Doom in order to help him wield all these forces, and much of what he had been doing up to this point was to the credit of the Batman Who Laughs giving him counsel and telling him what to do, more or less with the Batman Who Laughs setting Lex on a trail that he knew Lex would follow, with Lex just being Lex. And he wanted Lex to do all this, and I'm pretty sure we'll find out why in a few hours. But with Lex Luthor taking the advice of the Batman Who Laughs, which was pretty much for Lex Luthor in order for him to get what he wants, which is Lex Luthor at the center of everything, Lex Luthor would then have to lose everything, which is why with the assistance of Brainiac, he had placed himself within a new body in order to become that human-Martian hybrid that Perpetua had intended to achieve since the beginning of the multiverse, to be her perfect soldier. And once these soldiers are complete, they will be able to wield her forces, because she would need them to combat the judges and the Source in order to ensure that this multiverse would never die. And so for Lex Luthor, killing himself and taking on this new body was just step one of his process being complete. And so now very recently we had also talked about Lex Luthor sending out his different drones. You know, one went to Red Hood, we had seen one even go to Martian Manhunter, and I got links down below to catch you guys up on both of those. But like with Red Hood for instance, Lex Luthor's proposal to him is pretty much to be your Batman on the side of doom, just like Batman is on the side of justice. And I'm telling you guys, if that means we get a Red Hood final bat suit, I'm losing it. It's probably gonna be called like the Final Hood suit or something. I don't know. Final Hood. Final Hood? But in the case of Martian Manhunter, who had been searching for Lex Luthor because he still believes that child that was once his friend is still redeemable, we come to the point of where Lex Luthor sends one of these drones to John and Kendra. And John accepts this invitation from Lex Luthor, which Kendra is like, okay John, you know it's a trap. And she's really trying to speak reason to him, like, I don't know like what you think you're gonna talk Lex out of, or how exactly you think this is gonna play out, because this guy can't be trusted, and at the least before we go to see him, at least let us call for backup. But John refuses because he believes he'll lose the opportunity to help Lex, because if Lex knows the Justice League is coming, he's just gonna dip. But so when they arrive at the rendezvous point and Lex kind of locks in on the frequency that allows him to communicate with John, it's here against Kendra's better judgment that he just goes in with Lex into his hidden base, to where Kendra is left at the door because Lex causes her to pass out so she doesn't mess up his sales pitch. But when they arrive here, John immediately recognizes this location, because when they were children, this same place was also Lionel Luthor's main location of study, which is critically important because Lex Luthor, prior to the point where he had placed himself in his new body, and not long before he had merged his mind with Brainiac, he also acquired all the research which was collected by Lionel Luthor. Because if you guys remember back when we talked about Lex Luthor initially implementing the advice of the Batman Who Laughs, when he followed the trail that the Batman Who Laughs had given him, this had taken him back deeper into the relationship between Lionel Luthor and Vandal Savage. Because with the new history we're given, Vandal Savage introduced Lionel Luthor to nth metal, which led Lionel towards the concept of the totality. But from there, with Lionel Luthor being brilliant and extremely curious, Lionel then went in overdrive, and he was the first to discover the Steel Force, the invisible spectrum, and I mean the first as far as like human scientists. But then he went on to discover the sixth dimension, and what are imps like your Batmite or Mixospitalik. But Lionel Luthor, with all this information, he was light years ahead of his time. But Vandal Savage was pretty much like, look, I just told you to check out this nth metal, and now you're talking about the world heading towards doom? Nah, we gotta stop that. And it was then that he shut down all of Lionel's experiments and pretty much wiped his mind. But with that happening, and even as crazy as it was, Lex Luthor now has the sources, or better yet, he now has access to all the resources of Lionel Luthor's collective studies. And he even tells John here that he used those studies in order to modify himself, which in addition will make him unique from the rest of Perpetua's army, of which she still plans to build. Which is likely with Perpetua's army, or really with any army, that she had planned to disperse different powers to different portions of the army. Like some would use the Steel Force, some would use the Invisible Spectrum, but it's not likely that any of them will have all the powers like Lex. And it almost seems as if Perpetua is okay with that, because during the time that Lex's new body was cooking and he was reforming within his incubation, we find out that him and Perpetua had actually talked for hours, and Lex Luthor had learned much of what we learned from the World Forger back in the 6th dimension. But also this contributes to the idea of how much trust that Perpetua has for Lex Luthor, because much like Brainiac, she's entered his mind, and as far as she's aware, Lex is 100% willing to do what she's trying to do, as far as leading the multiverse towards doom and creating this undying multiverse. But I also wouldn't put it past Lex to use Brainiac to block out certain intentions that Lex Luthor has concerning Perpetua, because remember, prior to Lex Luthor going through his transformation or the Justice League entering into the 6th dimension, Brainiac and Lex Luthor merged their mind onto one wavelength, which could very likely be Lex Luthor trick up his sleeve going against Perpetua. But with Martian Manhunter here speaking with Lex, and he's just looking at him like, man, what did you do to yourself? And it's here that Lex Luthor pretty much explains the whole plan of the multiverse going towards doom. He tells John about Perpetua's plan for the perfect army, which was originally like your Martian human hybrid, to whom Lex tells John is the immortal apex predator, and this is what he needs to go back to. And he tells John, in order to do so, I need you to merge with me. And John kind of falls back like, nah bro, I don't get down like that. And I just love his expression, because he's looking at him like, you want me to what? And it's at that moment he's like, wait a minute, where's Kendra? It's dark in here. But as it turns out, Lex Luthor just takes the Martian DNA away from John, because this whole time he's had Lana Luthor's technology scanning John and doing a diagnostic, so that in the event that John said no, Lana Luthor could bypass John's telepathy and forcefully continue the procedure. And this is like something straight out of a horror flick, because when Lex Luthor is doing this, John, while he's breaking down, he calls for Kendra, he wakes her up, but even with her waking up and rushing in, there's nothing that she can do, because even when she rushes in, Lex Luthor uses his shields, which are designed to withstand impact from nth metal, and she just has to stand there and painfully watch John deteriorate into nothing. But with doing so, she swears to Lex Luthor that she is going to kill him for what he's done. But Lex Luthor is not the least bit worried, because he has completed 2 steps out of 3 to reaching the level of power pretty much equivalent to Perpetua, and he's become that much closer really much because of the advice of the Batman Who Laughs. And speaking of the Batman Who Laughs, just 2 things real quick. And the first one is, and we may see this in the final issue of the Batman Who Laughs miniseries, and we may or may not, because they might be saving it for later on throughout the Year of the Villain, because he's going to be there as well too. But one, I'm curious to see how much of this advice the Batman Who Laughs has followed for himself, because you guys know, like at least the ones that's been rocking with me for a minute, you guys know that I've always expected the Batman Who Laughs to be a little bit more than just Bruce Wayne and the Joker. And I say that because just look at him. Like, you can't tell me he ain't mixed with something else. But I do definitely look forward into getting that definitive answer. But in addition to that, I also gotta remind you guys that the Joker, he's already made his call that the Batman Who Laughs is coming for Lex Luthor, which is why the Joker spared Lex Luthor, because he knows what the Batman Who Laughs is gonna do to Lex is gonna be way worse. So I'm definitely ready to see how that plays out. But so now from here, catching up a little bit with the Justice League, who at this point, like we talked about, they have left with the Monitor and the World Forger in order to find the Anti-Monitor, who's really like the last person that they're looking for to join their side and give him a fighting chance against Perpetua, because they really don't know what's going on with Lex Luthor, at least not at this point, or at least not until Kendra fills them in about what happened to John and everything else. But while they're out here in the Anti-Monitor universe, to where John Stewart has to protect everybody from the positive matter universe so they don't blow up and catch a red death out here with the negative charge making them explode, he protects them during this time with his ring, but that's only good until the power on his ring runs out, or unless his willpower is just compromised. But it's funny to me because Batman is the closest one to John Stewart. Like, he's on his shoulder like I'm gonna be your motivation to keep your will up, because if I so much as see a flicker in this light, I'm gonna hit you with the whoop whoop so bad they gonna think I'm dancing with glow sticks out here. So keep your will up, bruh. But when they arrive here, they find out that the weaponers who usually reside here, that they're all dead, and from what it seems, the Anti-Monitor had them assist him in building something, and when they were done, he just killed them off and left. And from what it seems, he left a message written in the ground warning whoever arrived there not to follow him, which is really a bad look because he could be anywhere in the multiverse, which could be arguably worse than looking for a needle in a haystack. But immediately after finding this message, the League is met by Cheetah, Sinestro, and Grodd, and they have the advantage here in the Anti-Matter universe, mainly with Sinestro spending years here forging his yellow ring. And once again, this is happening simultaneously with everything going on with John, Kendra, and Lex. But in the Anti-Matter universe, where Batman is pretty much getting everybody ready to get in formation to fight, fight, and Jon Stewart is like, look, I ain't Sinestro. I can't hold y'all out here for years. And Superman's like, man, can't we just, and Jon is like, no, I can't do it. We gotta go. But as it turns out, it was all just a distraction just to buy time so that Jon Stewart's ring would run out and the League members would just be left out there to die. And so as a result, the World Forger takes care of it and gets them out of there. But that'll do it for this one, guys. Let me know your thoughts down below. Like, with Lex Luthor truly going OP, and I mean to the point of where the only way I can see Superman beating him is if like the World Forger throws them back into the 6th dimension. And then we get this crazy face-off like Dragon Ball Z style with Red Hood versus Batman, Superman versus Lex, and the World Forger and the Anti-Monitor jumping their mama. But let me know what you guys think down in the comments below, and we'll do it again in the next one. Alright, later.